Welcome back to AM Radio with me, Andre Main, this Wednesday, April 30th, 2014. In the first part of this second episode of AM Radio, we discussed the paramount, absolute, utmost importance of free speech and how we must do everything in our powers to not let it slide away. We need to protect the freedom of speech at all costs because it's the biggest freedom that we have that matters. And as soon as we start dismissing the importance of it, we are in trouble. All right, moving on to other subjects that I wanted to talk about. Now, this may seem completely obvious. To some of you, this may seem offensive, bigoted, and what have you, but this is just the case from my experience and as evidenced by everyone's behavior. I have to say that the left, and my actual title of this little story that I want to do, this little segment, is that the left are disgruntled hate mongers. No, it's how it is. The left are disgruntled hate mongers. They will not. They will not consider you a human being. Basically, if you have differing, if you disagree with them on something, if you have a different opinion on something, they will just go bananas. And it's happening to me these days with a lot of liberals sending me rather negative messages in which they personally attack me even though they don't know me. Of course, the positive messages that I'm getting from rational people are way more numerous. However, it is still a reality that whoever seems to be made aware of my existence and my views and what I stand for on the left, if they are completely closed-minded, which a lot of them are, unfortunately, and I wish it weren't the case. I wish that by my show I could convert more people to our side of minimalist government, libertarian, fiscal conservatism, but it just isn't that simple. A lot of these people on the left, they have been so indoctrinated and so brainwashed that any mention of conservatism, any mention of right-wing corporate, they think corporate greed, that they think mindless pawns of the capitalist fascist system, that's immediately the alarm bells that start ringing off in their heads, and unfortunately that doesn't really get anywhere. They start spouting crap, personal attacks, how I'm a fascist, how we I don't know what I'm talking about. Conservatives are all this and that and what have you. However, though, it's very rare. I also look at conservative circles that are there on the internet, and it's very rare to find anyone in those circles taking a swing, saying anything particularly to the level to which the leftists are very demeaning, very very offensive, very attacking, personally attacking. On the right, you don't find a comparable level of personal attacks and all that disgruntled hatred on right wing sites. You just don't see that. You don't see much of that at all. Like, for example, a couple of people who are actually following my program, and that's why I was able to see this, because they are they are members of the Republican movement as well, and while they are sharing this picture that's going around of Tony Abbott being compared to Hitler, which was on a Facebook page. It was posted on a Facebook page to something about kicking Abbott out of office. I have a link. Dismiss Tony, that's what it's called on Facebook. It's like a petition that they're doing. It's just a horrible, ugly picture that has nothing to do with any common sense whatsoever. It's just it says same S word, different a-hole. All right. Well, I asked him a simple question. How are Adolf Hitler and Tony Abbott the same? Just give me one comparison. Just give me one reason why you think they're the same. They couldn't give me a proper reason. They gave me some BS reasons, but not a proper reason, because it's just pure foul-mouthed hatred that they spew out, and they will spew it out without any thought, without any consideration. It'll just fly out of them, uh, because that's what they don't come on the internet with the intent on settling arguments through conversation and uh, trying to educate themselves, trying to figure out what the right way is. No, they have these presumptions, these assumptions that everyone on the right is evil, controlled by corporations. Could care less about regular people like you and me. They only care about themselves, and it's really sad that it's not only your average Joe Schmo out there on the liberal bench who's like that. When Julia Gillard was the prime minister in Australia, she went on. I think it was Q&A, and I have it right. I have it here on my. I have some bits and pieces of information about what she said. I didn't actually. I don't think I put here what show she was on, but yeah, I think it was Q&A while she was prime minister, and the issue was. Obamacare. I think it was Obamacare. Well, let me just read to you the information that I've gathered. So while being prime minister, Julia Gillard said about Americans, and that was on the edition of Q&A that I'm talking about, that they are very different people, referring to in contrast to Australians, very different people than Australians, because they are individualistic and distrusted, while Australians believe in a fair go. And she was masking that fair go with her socialist Marxist ideology. I think the issue that she was asked when she made those comments were what her stance is on how successful she thinks Obamacare will be, how successful it will be implemented in the United States, and the reason she was asked that question was in reference to they were talking about costs related to Medicare here in Australia. The costs of Medicare here in Australia and in the U.S., the Obamacare, are not comparable at all. Medicare in Australia costs $18.3 billion. Now, Obamacare costs, how much is it? How many trillion is it? 2.6. So far, 2.6 trillion is how much it costs. So price-wise, it isn't comparable at all. The only thing that you could kind of compare to Obamacare, like say that it's the Australia's Obamacare in terms of what a big failure it is, and how outrageously out of proportion it spun out in terms of costing us a lot more than it was planned. Then we would be talking about the NBN. The NBN is what could be said to be the Australia's Obamacare in terms of what a complete and utter mess it's become, and how it's cost us so much more than it was originally planned, and it will eventually end up providing a hell of a lot less than what we're even getting now. It will provide slower internet speeds than are available in Australia at the moment. What they were promising when it was when I think it was Julia Gillard, if not Kevin Rudd, who planned it, but Julia Gillard definitely ran with it, and this was in 2010 around the election time when she was in Q&A, and she discussed this. So she had promised that NBN would be would cost 40 billion. I think that was the number. It ended up costing upwards of 70 plus. It's a hugely out of proportion, unproportionally insane sum of money for a country such as ours of 22 million people to be pressured into paying that much tax. for a country like the United States, well, 2.6 trillion is about, when you take into consideration that they have 300 plus million people there, the number, the difference in the population wise, the difference kind of makes up for the difference in cost, and it kind of puts it at the same level of lavish absurdity. I mean, it's going to end up costing them about as much as it costs us. And a newly insured person in the U.S. under Obamacare has to pay. It'll cost them overall $53,000. It'll cost them. With excuse me, with Goth, whatever his name was, the labor PM who introduced Medibank and then became Medicare. Goff, I think it's Goff Whitlam, Goff Whitlam, whatever kind of name that is. Well, when he introduced Medicare, it was at the time a lavishly extravagant, huge project, comparable to what the NBN is for Australia right now, and comparable if you take into consideration the population difference too, how much Obamacare is going to affect America. It's going to affect them hugely because they're going to pay insane amounts of money for tax. And back when it was introduced, it also cost a lot of money. And Goff, I have to learn how to pronounce his name. Goff Whitlam. I don't know. So this guy, GW, the Prime Minister of Australia at the time in 1975, I think it was. Or was that when he was impeached? I don't know. He was impeached later on. He not only wanted to introduce the most expensive financial endeavor the Australian government had ever undertaken with taking over with establishing the Medibank, but he also didn't want to stop there. He wanted to. He was pushing for new bills to be passed so that he could. What were the bills called now? I forgot what they were called. Bills that would allow him to spend even more money in government's name. Well, whose money would that have been? That would have been the taxpayers' money. No, that especially after such a huge financially grilling endeavor, such as building this Medibank to provide government insurance, health insurance to everyone. Well, soon after that, not too long after that, he wanted to spend more money. So he fought and fought and fought. And luckily for the Australian people, the person in Senate at the time was a... well, obviously it was Liberals in Senate and Labour, but the Senate was actually controlled by the Liberals. And Goff Whitlam was Labour. So the Liberals were knocking down his further attempts to keep spending more and more money. And he had continuously kept pushing for these bills to pass, and they were at a standstill for a couple of months like that. And the Governor General stepped in, and at the time, without Queen's consultation. Now, Governor General is the person in Australia who can impeach the head of well, not the head of PM, isn't the head of government, but he can impeach the Prime Minister. And he can do that under Queen's order, or he can do that himself. In this case, he did it himself. Now, I wouldn't disagree with his decision, but if we had been a republic, which would have been a good idea, people would have been able to. He would have been able to be impeached, I suppose, by a court if he had done something against Australia's national interest. I said I'm not going to disagree with it. No, I will. Actually, I will disagree with his decision, because no matter how lousy a Prime Minister Goff Whitlam might have been, it's not up to any individual's discretion whether or not to keep the head of state. I wish I could say head of state. Keep the Prime Minister. It shouldn't be up to any individual. It shouldn't be up to the Queen of England. Shouldn't be up to the Queen of Australia, and it shouldn't be up to governor generals. It should be only to up to, I guess, the Supreme Court, or it should be up to the people. It should be up to the people. Why shouldn't it be up to the people only? Should be up to the people. But the point that I was making about him being impeached was because he was constantly blowing out money, and he didn't want to stop. And that just shows Labor's true colors. That's their ideology. They say, oh, we want everyone to have a fair go, and by fair go they mean they want to tax everyone equally, which is shitloads, excuse the language, and they want to feed that money into programs full of bureaucracy, and then those programs pay people their measly welfare checks and what have you. And so the more people paying tax, the less money they have, the more they have to rely on these programs. The more taxed we all are, the more businesses will shut down. The more red tape there is that is imposed by labor, the more businesses will shut down. The more businesses shut down, more people are unemployed. The more people are unemployed, more people are going to be on welfare. The more people are on welfare, the more people need to pay taxes to pay for these programs, which pay first bureaucrats who work for the government, and then the rest is given to these people on welfare. And it's just a cycle. It's like a cycle of sharing money around, and doesn't get anywhere. But this is the socialist Marxist ideology that they have. And labor government, if you look back in history with Medicare, with and NBN and all, they always want to control businesses. They want to pour money into businesses. They want to have state-owned, state-run businesses. And that's no way to go about these things, because a state-run business is never going to be as competitive as a real private business. Never going to be as competitive. And having it run by state is just going to make it even more restricted and more encumbered by red tape. It's going to make it harder for it to compete with international companies. It's a great big mess, like with Qantas, like Telstra, whatever, you name it. Every single scenario like that. And even if a business isn't owned by the government, like Holden, it had been sponsored by the government for so long, and the government had been imposing that labor government, union pressures. They had been imposing these impossible work conditions for all these employees, like something like 2 months of annual leave, paid annual leave, lavish bonuses, superannuation, insurances, this and that and what have you. Very high salaries, not to speak of which. So all those, and how can a company that is told by these hoity-toity people who think they know best, it's told they have to do this. They don't have any other option, so they have to do. So they do it. So they have to do this. Otherwise, you're not going to get our money. Well, they would rather be getting government's money, and not be doing a very good job themselves business-wise, than actually have to get off their asses and do a good job business-wise. Such as if they're falling behind other competitors, maybe change their business structure, or get rid of middle management, or whatever. Whatever works. If you have the government completely withdrawn from telling businesses what to do, if you have the government being standing aside and leaving a completely open playing field for every business to succeed on its own merits, then you're going to see a much more competitive market in every industry. You're going to see businesses succeeding, and you're going to see businesses failing. But they're going to succeed and fail on their own merits. And what's great is you don't need to have a government pour our taxpayers' money into that business to bail them out every couple of years or so. And they have just so Holden has so far cost Australia billions of dollars, and what's it contributed? Well, except for one national icon, so-called, which was the Commodore, which, in spite of it being called an icon, hasn't been popular at all for about 10 years. Yeah, I mean, they had a similar problem with it with GM, and Obama made a huge mistake in the U.S. to bail it out. and he bailed it out with billions and billions, I don't know how, trillions of dollars. And eventually, it still couldn't stand on its own 2 feet, in spite of the bailout, in spite of the buyout by the government. Eventually, they had to resort to selling it to Fiat. Fiat bought it, but it's still a surviving company. It still exists. It's still in existence. It's still manufacturing cars. If they hadn't, however, sold it to Fiat, it would have gone bust a long time ago, because the government, with all its bureaucracy, with all its red tape, tripping over each other, those bureaucrats, all the more laws than you can poke a stick at, and regulations and what have you. It's just a very unhealthy and uncompetitive environment to do business. And historically speaking, no single business has no single government-run, government-operated business has succeeded in the long run. They always go bust, or they barely stay afloat, but are nothing close to being competitive enough compared to their foreign or global competitors who are privately owned enterprises, or in the public domain. Businesses that are in the public domain, which is to say on the share market, and private businesses do much better than government businesses, because government taxes everyone, and taxes the hell out of everyone, gives money to business. Business just sits back and takes the money. If they're doing something wrong, they don't really care. They don't really need to change anything, because they're going to get the money from the government anyway. And before they know it, they're going to keep going in the wrong direction until they fall off a cliff, and it's too late. They're not even going to see the cliff. It's what happened with so many of them. Holden, one of them. Yeah, my point is, keep the government out of business. Basically, keep the government out of our lives. Just have the government for jails and fire brigade and the police, and to some extent hospitals, and that's all we need the government for. To some extent we need state government, because different laws work for different states, such as for unpopular states to live in, there need to be different laws, obviously, such as allowing people to herd cattle on public land, and such and so forth. So there is reason to have state laws, but I think the federal government should have less involvement, and we need something like the 10th Amendment, which would restrict the government from being able to willy-nilly go and take away powers that the states have. In the United States, the 10th Amendment gives this power to the states, which cannot be taken away by the federal government. Their land, their state integrity, their state lawmaking powers cannot be taken by the federal government. Unfortunately, there's no such amendment in Australia, and time and again, these powers have been taken away many times by people from both parts of the politics, even by John Howard. John Howard introduced blanket laws. Whatever gun laws a certain state had prior to his gun regulations, everywhere in Australia just went wham bam. The whole of Australia just went with this blanket policy of gun control. Beside that policy, another one of tragically regrettable John Howard's policies. And I don't mean to bag on John Howard only. Unless you've noticed, I take a swing at both sides of the aisle here. But sometimes, even though I'm in support of the side of the government that is more fiscally conservative, and it would happen to be in Australia that the Liberal government is the Liberal Party is the more fiscally conservative one, generally speaking. Sometimes they make crappy mistakes, and blanket law that prohibited states from making their own each individual marriage laws that John Howard had set while he was prime minister. The ACT actually had legalized gay marriage for one day, and then the following day, John Howard had already passed a law to just wipe out the state's power to be able to be able to legislate marriage laws. He federalized marriage laws because he wanted a blanket totalitarian theocracy under his rule. And that's horrible. That's now you can have someone who's fiscally conservative, although not 100% fiscally conservative, because he did also introduce taxes and whatnot. But uh, historically speaking, John Howard, if you take into consideration, he was a prime minister for 12 years, and he was prime minister for longer than Gough Whitlam and Julia Gillard and Abbott combined. He was in power longer than all of them, and those three, the leftists actually during their time they spent way more on all their projects, such as Medibank, the NBN, taxed the hell out of us with mining tax and carbon tax, which directly affected every price of commodities, and directly affected our pockets, how we pay for electricity and gas and everything. So I'm not completely blanketing. I'm not completely shielding Howard from the mistakes he did in terms of, yeah, he did introduce taxes, and it's better if you have two sides, and one side says we want taxes, one side says we don't want taxes. It's easier to choose that way, unfortunately. And it is like that in America. Unfortunately, though, in Australia, it's a little bit murkier than that. It's harder to tell who's for what, really. And even if they tell you I'm against taxes, like Tony Abbott, well, after the election, it turns out he is for taxes. Well, Julia Gillard also said she's against that. Whoever believed her in the first place, I can't get over the fact that anyone would have believed her in the first place, since she's a socialist, and fundamentally speaking, their most fundamental underlying principles are heavy taxation. So whoever could have believed Julia Gillard is well, I'm not gonna say it, but I mean, but the problem is, here in Australia, both sides are kind of, there's not much setting them apart if both sides raise our taxes. And that really sucks. It's much more clear-cut in the U.S. Obama is pro-taxes. Romney and others on the right are against taxes. And it's as simple as daylight. It's as clear as daylight. And I wish it was more like that, because here in Australia we have that issue dividing us. We have the monarchy and republic issue dividing us. Left and right, all kinds of things. And one person in Australia might be a Republican, but they may be supporting socialist Marxism, or they may be a monarchist and they support socialist Marxism. They might be a monarchist and they support fiscal conservatism. So there are so many denominations because of that, because of the monarchy thing itself as well. We are all divided. We can never find a group of people. It's really hard to find a group of people who are exactly on every fundamental issue, not on every nitpicky small issue, but on every fundamental big issue, on the same page as you. And I'm actually trying to bring that gap closer, to kind of close that gap as much as possible. I know it's naive to think that, but by educating people about the dangers of socialism and the benefits of open free market, fiscal conservatism, and small government, I'm hoping to hopefully maybe even get someone over to our side. Whew. All right, guys, that was another rant on my part. I'm not sure if I missed actually. I'm not sure if I actually missed explaining the difference. Did I explain the difference between the? Did I compare the Medicare to Obamacare and all that? I think I did. I did it enough to get my point across anyway, which is we don't need any of that stuff. We don't. Another reason why I think Obamacare is not good, right? I don't think I ever even mentioned why I don't think it is. It's because, same as Medicare, it ruins the private sector. It ruins the private insurance companies. This is the last thing I'm going to mention before I go today. Um, you have these flourishing health insurance providers who are private, and you have hundreds of them, and they are all competing against each other. They all want people to hop aboard to join their company. So they're going to offer you cheaper and cheaper plans, more affordable, all that good stuff, you know. On the other hand, you're gonna have these socialists wanting to make everything one single government regulated, mandated, that you have to pay for, an expensive, comparatively expensive government Medicare. Now, here in Australia, everyone's on Medicare, and that's why they call it a success. Now, how do you call it a success if everyone is on Medicare? Because it's the law. You know, you can have your private insurance, but you can't get off Medicare. In the U.S., it's the same thing. Everyone has to be on Obamacare. It's the law now. So, you know, people are signing out of their old insurance deals because they're going to be covered by Obamacare. They are losing their insurance that they had been provided for 20, 30, 40 years by their employers in most cases, because if you work, you're going to have your employer providing you with your insurance, and you're not going to have to pay anything anyway. And your whole family may even be covered by your insurance that the company provides for you. But now it's not the case anymore. Everyone has to pay, not only for themselves, and a new insurer, as I said, it costs $53,000. And the whole thing costs $2.6 trillion. Woo, baby. I mean, some people don't even want to be insured. Some people just, they don't care if they die. No, I mean, and it's their right. You know, they would rather. Some people know that they're gonna die, and they don't want to spend money. They want to spend money on going to Italy, going to, taking a vacation, going to climb Mount Everest or what have you. But you know, and the government is making you give money to Medicare, even if you don't want, to Obamacare or Medicare. And it's more expensive. Like here in Australia, AHM Insurance offers cover for as low as $130 per individual. With Medicare, however, if you wanna insure your family, let me just see where I have that. Let me just find it. Now, with this newest version of, I'm not used to the newest version of Microsoft Word, so I don't know how to find a single title. But I think I remember it's crashed anyway, so I'm just gonna try and remember the numbers. To insure your family in Australia under Medicare, you pay minimum between $2,500, depending on how much you're earning, your joint income is, and how many family members you have. Minimum pay to insure your family is $2,500. Maximum is $4,200, something like that. That's a close enough guess on my part. I think it's accurate. And when you can actually have yourself insured with a private insurer for as low as $130. Sure, it doesn't cover every type of cancer under the sun. It doesn't cover every kind of blood disease under the sun, But not everyone wants to be insured for every kind of disastrous scenario, because a 20-year-old young kid, there's a great chance that he's not going to get terminal illness anytime soon, and he doesn't want to waste his money. He wants to live it up. And yeah, sure, there's a possibility that he could develop something, and then he would be in trouble. But some people are willing to take that risk, and you shouldn't take the right away from people to take their own risks. You shouldn't take that right away from people. Not everyone wants to pay, and government telling you have to pay this, you have to pay for that. Well, they're calling Obamacare a success now because something like 7 million people have signed up since it started. 7 million out of 300 million. How do you consider that a success? Anyway, they reckon that by the time of the before the by-election, which is this year in America, they're going to have a by-election, and the Republicans are hoping to win seats to take over Congress and the Senate from the Democrats who are running the show. And if they do that, they want to repeal Obamacare. However, the Democrats are arguing that if it gets to the point that more than 20 million Americans are on Obamacare, by the time we hit the by-election, it's going to be too many people signed up to Obamacare already to be able to revert back to the old system. So you'll be stuck with this. So that's their argument, and they're saying it's a success because of that. Well, how do you you impose something on someone and you say you have to buy this or you're breaking the law, and then people buy it, even though not everyone does, but some people buy it, and then you say it's a success? What the hell is that? What kind of logic is that? It's like going around smashing people's windows, car windows, and having a glass repair company, and then everyone calls you, and then you call your business a success. It's BS. Come on, man. I mean, it's just taking away the freedom of speech, taking away the freedom of what to buy, and the government the leftist governments want to tell you what you can eat, what you can't eat, what you can and can't drink, what you can and can't smoke, that you have to exercise, that you have to do this and that and the other thing. Just want the government to shut the hell up and, give us a little bit of breathing space and get the hell out of our lives, because, we already have families. A lot of us have wives, we have mothers who care about us, who tell us, you should do this, you shouldn't do that. That's called nagging. When we have the government nagging, and if you don't listen to your old lady nagging, that's not breaking the law. If the government is nagging at you don't listen, it's breaking the law. So it's really scary. And if the government gets so out of whack, and it gets too relaxed about this, and they start imposing, you have to do this and that on every smallest thing. You have to go buy gas on a Friday, or something like that. They can easily make a law like that, and gee whiz. Well, there's already a law saying in England you can't defend the Muslim faith, and it's ridiculous. There's no end to there's no limit to how much they want to control you. There are people out there who want to tell you when you walk, they want to tell you left foot, right foot, march, 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 left foot, right foot, left foot, right foot, right foot, right foot, right foot. And you have to listen to them, and they want to be in the position of authority to tell you to do so. And a lot of these people end up becoming politicians on the left side of the politics, because the left is the so-called progressive side and the evolved side, and they think they think because they're educated, they have these degrees in socialist economics and whatever. They think that they're more evolved and smarter than you, and that you're not smart enough to make your own decisions. So they want to make your decisions for you, and they want to feel morally superior doing it. So just stop these idiots, take the government out of our lives, and take our lives back into our own hands. All right, this rant has been going on for long enough. How many minutes is this? This is more than half an hour so far. It's 38 minutes. So thank you all for all of you who are listening to me for this. It'll be the final part of my of today's episode. Join me tomorrow for more different topics. Until then, this is Andre Main. Thank you so much for joining me, and I'll see you tomorrow. Good night.